Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. Before I really dig into what I think is going to be a really awesome and fun episode, I have to give a ton of credit to my guest, Nancy Dillingham Marks. I almost ran your whole name together there, Nancy. So at about this same time last week, I hit record and we were going to record this episode, but maybe about 30 seconds, if that, into my intro, my internet cut out for an unexplainable reason at the time. And I thought, oh, it'll just come right back. That's just what the internet tends to do. Maybe we have to reset the box or something else happened. Apparently, it was either a frog or a gecko or some kind of Florida oriented pest of some sort that cut our time and our episode short. And I'm telling you all of this because, being an entrepreneur, running a podcast, whatever it is, it can be a roller coaster. It's not always perfect. And a lot of times you have really amazing people like Nancy who are very understanding and will work with you. But that's not always the case. So, and especially since I can be a real perfectionist, try to relax in my, as I'm getting older. But, you know, even though Nancy is like really, really nice, hey, you never know. But she was tremendously understanding and so gracious, flexible, and we decided to get back together and try this again at the same or almost the same time, same same night. And now that I explained all that for probably very little reason, Nancy Dillingham Marks is a business owner. She specializes in fused glass. She is the founder of Glass Arts Collective, and it's a glass art studio, gift shop, and she teaches classes. It features stained glass, mosaic, and fused glass. And whether you're looking at her Instagram, her YouTube, or I don't know if there's much on LinkedIn, but if you're looking at her social media or you see the background that she has on this episode, you can see just a sampling of the awesome work she does. And I'm going to finally give Nancy a chance to say hello. Welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
Great, Mark. Thanks. Everybody should be more understanding. Technology is a wonderful thing, but it also can be a pain because things can happen. And it's not anything to do with either of us. And you know what? We were meant to be able to visit, and here we are. Yes.
Well, the other thing, for some reason, when you said the word technology, I was like, oh, yeah, she has a long history of working in technology. So I guess if anybody would have been understanding, it would have been probably you, not only because you're so nice, but because before your business, you worked in technology for years.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's kind of what brings us here is your journey. And much like, it seems like as this year in particular winds on with this show, I'm noticing more and more stories of my business started because of COVID or during COVID. And it's not like the past few years that hasn't really been around, but I think I had a lot more people from like right around or before COVID. Now it's almost like the baby boom. This is like the COVID boom, which is probably not very positive. But the the context that we're talking about here is, and I can't wait to talk to you about your path. And one thing that I want to go into, so you grew up in a little bit of a different era, whereas I guess college and that kind of stuff not pushed quite as much. I don't know if you went to college, but whether you did or not, I don't even know if it matters. But I'd be curious to know what you might have dreamt about growing up and whether you ever even thought about like the possibility of becoming an entrepreneur.
I never thought about being an entrepreneur. I had a lot of opportunities to see and learn all kinds of things as I was growing up. Um, my parents were amazing. They opened up our eyes to so many different things and taught us to be independent. Um, we moved from Indiana to Massachusetts because my dad was a college professor, and so we grew up kind of in environments that were a little bit more forward thinking, which was always my thought being in a college environment. Um, in the junior high that I went to, because it was still junior high, not middle school back then, uh, there was a local cable television station in our junior high, and it was available for us to learn things in, and I fell in love with that, and I became very proficient in it. My mom would get calls for me to direct the League of Women Voters or the town hall meetings. I wasn't old enough to drive yet. So I had this big dream that I was going to get involved in television production. And when I graduated high school, I went to Springfield, Massachusetts, and talked to one of the local stations. And the most wonderful man, I feel terrible, I don't remember his name, but he was very honest with me. He knew my background. He knew I had taught television production at the school. And he said, unfortunately, it's a union position. It would probably take close to 20 years for you to be allowed to be behind that console that you love so much. And he was just so honest about it. And he goes, you're going to serve coffee to people who aren't as excited about it as you are. He's absolutely right. And he said, it's going to drive you absolutely crazy. And again, he was absolutely right. So I sort of thought, okay, I have to think about something else now. When I ultimately came to California, not necessarily for television, but there wasn't anything that was of interest to me in that small area, um, which has grown a lot since then, but it was very education oriented. And so I came to California. A friend referred me to an employment agency. I went the next day on a job interview for a clerk typist and was hired on the spot to start the next day. So I said, okay, this was a good move. And I've jumped around. I worked at ABC, I worked for IBM, I worked for Sony Pictures, Columbia Pictures. I worked for a lot of corporations. And I started off in very different positions, and a lot of them in the entertainment industry. When your boss leaves, you're out of a job. And that was not something I was happy about. So I went over to the IT department. I did do some college. I never finished. I had a professor who told me not everyone's meant to go to college. He said, you already have the basics. You have very good street smart. You will not learn anything here that will help you in your day to day. He says, you already know it. Okay. But I did try computer programming. It was on punch cards on a mainframe. And it was Pascal and Fortran. And I didn't like either one, but I understood the technology and the thought process behind it. So I didn't go into IT right away, but eventually I did. And I really enjoyed the opportunities that I was learning. It was a lot of very detailed stuff. And I found the opportunity, which was something that was always important to me, is finding a purpose where I could make a difference. I never realized how important it was to me until really that job. And I became the director of administration for the department after several years. And I did the budgeting and forecasting. And literally, I could tell you for every single machine in the data center, what line of business, what software, and how much memory was on it. So that at any point we needed to change something, we had the base that we needed. So it was really pretty cool. And so I went from there to other technology businesses. Obviously, I've named some of them already. And then I ended up having my second husband. We were engaged. And he goes, instead of working for IBM and selling servers, which they still had Intel servers back then, he says, you should be growing our business. You know, we're getting married. You're going to be part of this business. So I went to work for him for the last 17, 18 years of my corporate environment. And I was the chief operating officer. So I really learned how to run a small business. So in that time frame, he decided he was ready to retire. He was ready to move on. And I was going to be out of a job again. So I was like, okay, now what am I going to do? So that's kind of how I kind of left the major corporate to make a jump to something else. It was
So,
a bit of a jump to decide what.
so I have two thoughts. First of all, Pascal. I was in, I don't know, 10th or 11th grade. I think it was 10th grade. And I can't remember like what my grade was. I think I did wind up finishing it. I can't even remember. I mean, it was almost 30 years ago. But
Yeah.
if I did get a passing grade, like I'm guessing I probably got a C for showing up. I think there were like two of us in the class. The one person totally understood. And the reason I know that I was probably in 10th grade because I know they were 2 years older. They totally got it and were just right on top of it. Anytime somebody says Pascal, I'm like, oh no, 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 no. Like, I didn't understand a lick of it. And I can't remember if I dropped out or just was given a C for trying, but it was hard. It was very hard.
It was very hard. It was a great way to meet guys because I usually put the mainframe into a loop and I needed somebody to help me troubleshoot it.
Very
So that wasn't
interesting.
it was an interesting way of learning the software.
Yet there was one other person, and that was a girl, 2 years older, and I'm like, well, it's not like this girl is remotely interested in me. I'm just a sophomore, a geeky sophomore, I guess. But the second thought, putting all that Pascal stuff to the side, is so I don't know if I really mentioned it, but I've been working in the television industry for like 20 years. I
Yeah.
understand, even though it's a little bit of a different era for me, I totally understand. Working in television is very, very difficult. And I'm guessing that that large console you wanted to work in front of, did you want to be a technical director?
Yep.
It's not easy. I haven't
Yeah.
actually done a whole lot of technical directing in my career, and it's funny because some of the things that they were telling you, I also found to be true. It's like you come in, you're feeling very artistic, and you have a certain perspective of it. You think that you're going to be working in a studio or you're going to be out there shooting and involved in something exciting. And that is largely not the case. I, I, for one, for the past few years, have been working like hybrid, mostly remote, and I'm still working in the field. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the world has changed a lot, obviously, because of COVID, but
Yes.
uh, I don't necessarily have to be in an office to work with my team or to do what I do. It's a totally different world. I mean, even 20 years ago or so, when I was first starting out, minus my internship, which was at a major production network where it was live 24/7. I
Yeah,
don't know if I really like needed to be on site to do the kind of work I've been doing. So it tells you, A, television is not what people think it is. There's a lot of different hardworking people who don't get a lot of credit, and you don't see their
absolutely.
names in the credits that are keeping the business going. And it's a tough, tough business. That story, boy, it doesn't ever resonate with me.
Yeah. And I wish I remembered his name because I was so grateful for his honesty. And I still never understood how he saw what work I did because it was a local cable. It didn't extend it didn't even extend to my parents' home. Heaven forbid it extended all the way to Springfield. So I don't know if he lived in the area or how it happened, but it was kind of cool.
I miss those days of more local television too, not the
Yes.
spend my whole time living like 40, 50 years in the past. But I know growing up, yeah, cable was just starting to, get its legs a little bit, but for a good part of the first part of my childhood, it was still very much local TV, local stations, and it was amazing the quality of the content back then for only having so many of those local stations and then the networks off of the stations off the networks. And I mean, it's a different world.
Absolutely.
So,
But the town meetings were a lot of fun because I had six cameras going live with one still camera up in the control room, and it had slides on it because I learned the first time they dim the lights to show the slides. And all of a sudden, my cameras have no visibility of much of anything. So I used to go right after school. I could walk downtown. I'd go through town hall and ask, and I'd already prepped everybody, but I need your set of slides. I'll give them back to you in time for the show, but I need to make copies. And I'd stop at the high school, go in the dark room, make copies of all the slides that were being shown, put them all together, all before the show started that same day.
oh my gosh. And that's where there's a little bit of a difference because I know back further from like the 80s and 90s, it was much more hands-on. I mean, by the time I was even in college, it was fairly digital. And then so I stopped going to college for a few years, and then when I went back, it was even more digital, and it's just evolved. I can't even imagine what the classes and the teaching is like today. I know it's something I've considered getting like a doctorate and becoming a teacher, which is a whole other topic for a whole other time here. But this is about you. But yeah, it's just amazing how much things have changed, and I love hearing the prior era and what you had to do, and you still talk like you're a TV person, which I love. So amazing.
Well, I love doing things. And I love being part of things and making a difference and helping change things. And I've been very blessed in that respect. But as you were saying, COVID really kind of impacted a lot of things. I finally decided that I wanted to open this studio because the one I'd been working at, they closed the branch. And I opened the doors for business 5 weeks before COVID closed them down in California completely.
Wow.
And that was pretty big impact on me. But what it did is it really made me recognize my mindset and all the things I'd been telling myself over the years. Like I told myself I wasn't creative. And thanks to Fuse Glass, I found out no, not only am I creative, I'm an artist. And I knew I was a business person already. So I wasn't uncomfortable about opening the studio because of the business, but were people going to, was I going to have imposter syndrome because I haven't been doing fused glass all my life, that type of thing. But I took that time and instead of looking at it as a negative, which is something I couldn't change, it was negative. But my mind went to what are all the things I can be doing right now that will improve my business? What kind of changes? I've got more time now. I can take a little more effort. I can make more samples. I can push the envelope. I watched a lot of video trainings and came to the studio and did it. Um, and it's amazing how much we can convince ourselves of things we tell ourselves that aren't true, but we believe it. And that was probably the biggest thing for me in shifting because of COVID. That
So,
was really very positive.
so imposter syndrome is a topic that gets visited pretty often on this show, and I've had my bouts with imposter syndrome my entire life. I mean, going from pretty much the time I can remember being on this planet, I've had people, judging me and not really having the kind of confidence that I think maybe some other kids have, with adults and teachers and things like that. And, you know, when I will say when you're born with an issue, like I was born with a cleft lip and palate, and, it's a part of a bigger syndrome. You at least I won't vouch for other people, but I'll vouch for myself that you just know, that you're different and, it can mess with you. It still messes with me today, although not as much. I feel like I've broken through a lot of that imposter syndrome of just the voices in your head saying, well, you don't look the part, you don't sound the part, and all this other stuff. And all those years, and I mean, I can't speak for where your imposter syndrome might have come from, but I do know one thing, just kind of straying slightly away from that. You also mentioned about creativity, and I think one of the things I learned as a manager in one of my jobs along the way in life is that a lot of people feel like their creativity isn't getting utilized enough. And I wonder if years of just working as you worked, you just figured, I'm not a creative person. You look like you have a thought with that, so I'll let you go.
Well, you're right. And sometimes I think what happens is we put the word creativity associated with the wrong thing. So the way in which I approached a lot of my sales and the way I approached organization of my job and different jobs was very creative, but I didn't view it as being creative. To me, it was logical. So it's a very interesting thing on how we also define what's normal and what's not normal, what's creative, what's not creative, what's artistic, what's not. I mean, you name it. There's two sides of all of it, and it's just whether we choose to choose the more positive view of it or we choose to take a negative view of it. And I mean, I remember when I think I was in junior high. It might have been high school, but it must have been high school because I was taller. I have very long legs. My body's proportionally not correct with my legs. And I was wearing a skirt, and this woman came up to me and said, "You shouldn't wear skirts." And I said, "Why not?" She goes, "Because it looks like just two pencils sticking out of the bottom of it." And that stuck with me for so long. And it should never have even been something I paid attention to. But it's so funny how it was something negative. I grabbed hold of it and said, it must belong to me. It's negative versus other people have told me, why don't you ever wear skirts? And so I would tell them, they're like, oh my God, that person was crazy. You look great in skirts. So, it's really funny how what we choose to believe.
I think
And I've learned, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I keep interrupting your pauses. Go ahead.
Just gonna say, we all choose what we want to believe. And later in life, I have chosen to believe a lot more positive things. And when I hear a negative, I just kind of go, that doesn't belong to me, and continue it. So nope, you're negative. You're positive. Same to you, not you. That's sort of, and that I'd have to tell you, I'm a lot happier.
That's like really good advice. That's probably advice I should follow myself because it's so easy to get caught up in all of those other negative things, the negative feedback, the imposter syndrome, and especially if you've gone through so much life thinking that or hearing it for one reason or another, it's hard to shake it. And I think that is probably one of the I've heard a lot of really great advice doing this show. That's probably one of not to rank everybody, but that's one of the better pieces of advice I think I've ever heard. And I've heard a lot of it.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's just amazing the effect that that has on your mind and can really hold you back. And that's one of the reasons that I like doing this show is to show people not to let those things hold you back. Because, for example, sometimes I'll hear somebody say, oh, I've thought about being a podcast host or speaking or whatever, but I couldn't do that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't have I always think of it as I don't have 100% what some of these people have, and they're doubting themselves, and yet I found a way to overcome that and put myself out there and do it. So for me, I'm like over 100 episodes into this, so it's like if I can do it and keep myself going and can get amazing people like you on my show, then I mean, you can do it too, or do whatever else you want to do.
I taught my daughter early on, and I remind her somewhat regularly, whatever you truly set your mind to doing, you can do it. It's when you just kind of soft, like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I should do it." But she wanted to live in San Diego and she wanted to work at the Hotel Del Coronado. And she and her friend moved down to San Diego and she applied at the Hotel Del Coronado and got the job. And she's now 18 years there. And she's loving it. She loves San Diego. She loves the hotel. She loves the people she works with and the people she meets. And she used to be this shy kid who didn't really want to talk to anybody. And now she's just so grown and I'm so proud of her and um, honored that I made a difference.
Yeah, you most certainly did, and that's amazing. I mean, that's what it's all about. That's what I feel we should all be doing is trying to build each other up a little more and not tear each other down, not to become preachy, but I mean, you know, that's how I feel. And I know my story, so can't really, I'll tell you once we're done where exactly I work now, but where I am working is, or at least the company is a company I wanted to work for about 25 years. And it took me a little over 20 to finally get in with this company. And it wasn't even something like I had actually kind of eased up on my attempts to get in. I had interviewed for a variety of things, didn't work out, didn't get XYZ position, but when I wasn't thinking about it, when I least expected it, I, got a call and, one thing led to another, and now I'm working for that dream organization. So you never know what's going to happen. You never know where life is going to take you, which is part of what this show and the forks in the road in life are all about.
Absolutely. Mark my words, this is going to work out for you.
I hope so. I mean, I kind of feel like it is working out. Just
Yes,
I've done so many
it is.
episodes. People want to be on my show, so far as I'm concerned, it's working out. But I we should get
I,
to you. So
yeah.
let's talk a little bit more. So we know a bit about your story, and we know about that fork in the road with COVID a little bit. Talk a little bit about actually like getting started and the early days of the Glass Collective and Glass Arts Collective, I should say. Sorry, and tell that story and how you got to this point.
Well, I set up the gift shop in the front and then the classroom areas in the back. So as California was starting to open up, when they opened up to retail, I was able to be open and people wanted to go somewhere. So I was advertising in like the local paper and social media. And then as um, restaurants were allowed to open, I figured, you know what, I can separate people more than a restaurant can. And they can have their own equipment to work with, their own set of glass. So a little bit about fused glass in general, because probably most of your audience doesn't know what it is. There's blown glass, which most people have heard about, and that's right around 2000 degrees, and you're going all the time. You can't stop and think about what do I want to do now. It's got to kind of be planned out, and you go for it. Stained glass is something people think about with church windows frequently, and it can be with lead, it can be with foil, and it's a very concise cuts, grind, a lot of grinding because you need to have it fit together really tightly. Fused glass is in between. So we're considered kind of a warm glass. Everything's made at room temperature or however comfortable we feel like being in the studio at that particular time. We can be laughing, we can have a glass of wine, we can be telling jokes, the music's playing, and you take the glass and you cut it, you break it. You can take little pieces, you can take big pieces, and you put them together. You can do it as abstract or you can do it as very concise design. And we put a little bit of glue together to hold it together because we're going to move it to a kiln, similar to a ceramics kiln. And we're going to heat it up between about 14 to 1500 degrees. And it runs a cycle just about, 17, 18 hours. So that it slowly goes up, it slowly comes down. And when you open the kiln, the heat has transformed the glass. It went to a thick molten, like a thick honey. And so it's smoothed the edges, it's softened it. Colors come alive in the heat, some of the colors more than others. And it just shines more. It's like it's got this nice shiny coat on it. So we kind of act like it's Christmas morning. We gather around the kilns and we open up the kiln and everybody goes, oh, oh my, oh gosh, look. We have a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of laughter, like I said, in the studio. And I'll put it all together for the people who took a class, put it in a bag with their name on it, ready for them. I send them a picture telling them their art's ready to be picked up. And when they come in, I have a lot of fun with those people who said to me when they came in that they didn't think they had a creative bone in their body and they weren't artistic, because that's what I said to myself for so long. So I always try to get those people specifically to open it up and look at it in the studio. And they are so impressed with what they've done. They love it. They're just in awe. I mean, it's almost speechless. And so I look at them with a big smile and I said, well, you can never say you're not creative or artistic ever again because we now have the proof you are. And I even have photos. And we laugh and they're like, I had no idea. And a lot of people tell me how therapeutic it is. It was very calming for them. They really relaxed through the class. Art doesn't have a really clear definition. I mean, you can doodle, you can paint, you can cook, you can sing, you can dance, you can write. There's so many things you can do in the word art, but doing something can really help you relax, to take your mind off of whatever it is that's just like creating that anxiety that you've got going. And all of a sudden, you're in a better place. So being able to come in and play with glass every day helps me to be in a really great place on a regular basis. And sharing it with others is just such a gift. And I love it.
I can't imagine anybody having a whole lot of anxiety because just coming into your class because right now I've never worked with fused glass in my life and I'm ready to go. Like you just have such a great attitude, very welcoming, and that's gotta be very important when somebody's like, I feel like for some reason this might interest me, like this might be fun, and they've never done it, but they're not sure if they have the ability. And that's wonderful. Like, what an attitude that you have to invite people in and give them something that they didn't have before.
And we teach safety. So, probably the biggest fear factor that people have is working with glass, you're going to get cut. And we have a lot of safety procedures that we put into place, and we remind people on a regular basis if they don't remember on their own what to do to make it safe. And I'll say to a class at the end of the class, did anybody get poked? And more times than not, I mean, it's not that often that somebody actually even gets poked. So, and it's just amazing because again, if you follow the process and the procedures, it's easy to work with. And we teach techniques. So our classes are 2 to 3 hours for the most part. We don't try to teach a lot of techniques at the one time. We want to make it easy to understand the techniques and to be able to do them and not be trying to juggle between, oh, which one should I do now? And so we've broken it down into more bite-sized pieces. And there's no formal track that you have to take after the introductory class so that we know that you know the basic techniques. So we had a snowflake making class yesterday, and we have all these beautiful snowflakes sitting waiting to go into the kiln. It's just so much fun. And at the end of the class, I love walking around and looking at everyone's art and just going, wow, boy, they're creative. Oh my gosh, I never would have even thought of doing that idea with it. And it's like I learn from them just as much as they learn from me.
I feel like one of the reasons that you must love what you do, and you clearly love what you do, is the same reason I love doing this show is the relationships that you form with other people. And it sounds like you are forming a lot of really great relationships through this business.
Absolutely. And I love going and talking about it, but most people don't get it when just from hearing it. They have to go look at our website. They have to come in themselves. They have to see it at a friend's house, what somebody else did, and then it starts to make more sense. But
Well, no, go ahead if I am cutting you off again. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. I'm giving you a chance and I jump again, so it's my fault.
Look at that. This is the most courteous episode I've ever had. So, I guess what I was thinking about, and I have talked about it in a roundabout way, but down here in Florida, there's a certain mouse that you can visit. And I have visited said mouse many, many times in the 2.5 years I've been in Florida. And one thing that I did recently was make a Christmas ornament through, you're not really a part of the like fused glass process, but you get to pick out the beads and design and you put the little glue on it. It's most likely not really the same thing, but it feels like it's a little bit similar. So I'm
Absolutely. In Epcot Center, right?
yeah.
It's in Epcot Center. Yes. I think it's in the Germany pavilion, if I remember correctly.
Wow, you are 100% correct. Yes, that's exactly right. And it wasn't my idea, it was my wife's idea. She wanted to do it. And initially I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. It wound up being a lot of fun. It was so much fun. The first ornament got broke by accident, not by me, but by somebody else in this house. And and so they were
You won't use
worried,
any names.
won't name names, but I think they might have thought I wouldn't be open to doing it. I'm like, are you kidding? I had a lot of fun. Like we were, especially once I had a beer or two, like I was having a blast. It was a great time. And especially this time around, I thought more about you and doing this episode. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I at least have a little bit of a window into what Nancy might talk about.
Absolutely. And there are places to do fused glass all around the world. There's more studios opening up. It's only been around about 50 years. It isn't a long time, ancient type of glass art. And so it's a lot of fun. I know not everyone's going to be able to make it to Southern California here, in the Thousand Oaks area. We're halfway between LA and Santa Barbara, just in case anybody is in the immediate area. But there are a lot of other places, and I highly recommend it. I have not met a teacher of fused glass that I have not really enjoyed. So I'm sure you're going to find some terrific people. Maybe they're not as much fun as I am, hey, but
And I think having fun with what you're doing, especially as an entrepreneur, is so important because I think with the exception of somebody like you who's actually on location, you're teaching people, you're interacting with people way more than somebody like me. So it's a little bit different, but being an entrepreneur can be a very isolating thing. And it's important to remember to have fun doing it too, because that's that's the whole point. So
absolutely.
yeah. I,
And I don't recommend everyone try to take a hobby and make it into a business. I mean, you really have to want to take on the responsibility of a business as well. And not everybody's good at doing both parts of it. But at the same time, like when I first started, I was more of a business person than a fused glass artist. So I had friends lined up to help teach more advanced classes. I didn't have to know it all, and I didn't have to do it all. Now, yes, I enjoy doing a lot of it, but it's okay to let other people help. And that was probably something that took me a little bit longer to accept, but I have no problem sharing now.
Those are very important lessons too, to learn to delegate and learn to say, hey, this is not my strength. I think I need somebody else to do this and to help out. And I know that is something I'm still kind of going through with my show because I consider myself a pretty creative person, but I know I can't do everything as effectively as maybe somebody else. So for me, it's still kind of like okay, when and how and who are going to do this, that, and the other thing. And these are very tough and real decisions you have to make when you're running a business. And I'm sure that your prior experience with entrepreneurship really helped. And I'd be interested in knowing how that was an advantage and what else you might have learned since opening your current business.
I think one of the really important things to understand is what you want the end result to be and work backwards. So, I mean, I've had to have my website rebuilt on a new platform. And my first thought process, because I had so many things going on, I had a lot of personal things happening in my life. And so I just figured they'd look at the old site and figure out how to build it again in the on the new platform. Yes, maybe some of the things should have been changed, but I thought the old platform was fine. So that to me was a pretty simple task. And it was amazing how difficult it was for people to do that in the new platform. So I had to stop myself and think about wording it in such a way that works for other people. And some people learn better from reading, some people learn better from listening, and some people learn better from pictures. And so I've worked with different people throughout my career and trying to learn what their best method of learning was. And in some conditions, I would say this is what I need the end result to be. How you get there, you should come up with the same number I have here. So you and I don't have to do it exactly the same way, just as long as the end result's the same. So you do it in a different order, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. It doesn't have to be my way 100%. And I would say the thing that I still struggle with a bit is when people don't want it to be the same as I want the end result to be. And I have to step back and go, does it really matter? I mean, that's the first and most important question. Get that ego out of the way. Does it matter? And of course, my first answer is always yes, it does. It has to be my way. But then I think about, what are they trying to accomplish their way? Is it a better way? And so, there's times where I'm not right, that there is a better way to do things. And I always go through the first initial gut, no, it's got to be my way. And then it's like, okay, stop, step back, let that ego kick him out of the headset and start listening to what is really going on. And, uh, and there's days where I'm more receptive to it than others. I mean, there's days if I don't feel well, that's a really hard thing to do. So I'll put it aside to a day I feel better.
And
I'm
that's
good.
real. And I once again am talking right
No,
over. I was gonna say it's really hard to let go. And sometimes there might be something going on that they're doing and it just clicks. And you're like, something, maybe that is the better way. Okay. And I know I've had that experience as a spouse, I've had that experience as as like a manager in corporate America. I've had that experience as a person. I've had that experience all over. And, sometimes as much as I like to listen to my intuition and I trust it, sometimes you're just not right. And it's great that you're able to toss the ego to the side. That is very difficult to do. And I know your experience with the website. I'm also having a similar conversation with myself because I know there are better podcast hosts, like hosting platforms than the one I'm probably using. And those kind of things it's a big decision. So if you have somebody, even if they're doing it not quite the way you want to do it, but they're getting the same result, that means a lot.
absolutely. So yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes and I admit it. Um, but you know what? I learn from them. And I like to look at it from the better point of view. Sometimes it takes me a few days to get there. I'm not saying that I have this switch that I can turn on and off quickly. But it's really amazing when you look back and you sort of stop and you say, well, wait a minute. Why am I so animate? It has to be this way. Yeah, if it's something to do with safety, it has to be a safety thing. If it's better safety, great. But if it's not as safe, nope, not willing to accept that change. Those types of things. Am I going to give things away for free? Not necessarily a good idea. Okay, but you just kind of go through, and you don't have to agree with anybody all the time. And it's okay to say, I appreciate your thoughts and your recommendations or your suggestions. Let me think about it. Or, you know what? It's just not right for me.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts coming into this episode. And this is like the world's weirdest segue, but I know that you have somewhere you need to be in a little bit. So I'm going to ask you to tell the audience how they can find the Glass Arts Collective, how they can find you, how they can work with you, how they can visit etc., etc.
Oh, one of my favorite subjects. So yeah, it's for Instagram, Facebook, and my website are all Glass Arts with an S on it, collective.com. And to book a class, it's right on my website. My gift shop, which is amazing, is on the website. And I stopped to say it's really amazing because I let my Open Studio VIP members, they're my artists in residence, they are also in my gift shop. So we currently have 12 different artists in the gift shop, all with different techniques and styles. And oh my gosh, this stuff is beautiful. We have some museum quality art in our gift shop. Um, and I am on LinkedIn under Nancy Marks. It might be Nancy Dillingham Marks. I've been taught to rebrand myself because there was a Nancy Marks that was not necessarily a good person. So I've been going through changes like that. I am on YouTube as well at glassartscollective.com. So I don't have a lot of different places, but I try to make it less broad and keep it more concise.
Well, at the very least, I recommend heading to the Glass Arts Collective Instagram because you just posted your first dropout bowl. This looks
Yes.
gorgeous.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
yeah, I caught this right before we connected tonight. And I'm like, man, I gotta make sure I at least get that mentioned. That looks awesome. So, nice job with that. And
Thank you.
nice job with everything. I mean, I feel your passion with this awesome business, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing. And I appreciate just your soul, your kindness, and this was a fantastic conversation. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here.
Mark, this was a lot of fun. We might have had to delay it a week, but you know what? It's still a lot of fun visiting with you.
I think it worked out for the best. I really think I personally feel like I did a better job this week than I would have last week. I was just very tired last week. So
Hey, things happen for a reason. I'm sorry it happened. It's never fun to lose your internet for any length of time. So yes, this was absolutely the way it was supposed to happen.
it's another sign to me. I always talk about how everything in life happens for a reason. And that I don't know if that just helps to keep me a little more calm when things like that happen, or if it's true, or if it's both. But in this case, I think it definitely uh, was A and B. So
Sure.
I just want to thank you again. This was Nancy Dillingham Marks, not the other Nancy Marks. And she is the founder of Glass Arts Collective. Thanks again for being on Mark My Words. I'm Mark Schmidt, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.